We see an opportunity to do what's right, to change business as usual, to become business as it should be, where people don't just live and work, they thrive. To do that, Colliers is committing to elevate the way we do business, to elevate the built environment. We will minimize environmental impacts in our own operations and through the services we provide our clients. We will increase diversity and inclusion in Colliers and across our procurement practices to create an atmosphere welcoming of diverse ideas and perspectives. We will promote health and well-being in our operations and through our client services to help improve lives. Together, we will elevate the built environment and build better for our collective future. For ourselves, for our clients, for our communities, for the world.
Hearn Hearn Consulting is now helping building owners and developers achieve their preferred green building certification through Hearn Hearn Green Building. With specializations in LEED, WELL, and BIRD certification, green building accredited professionals of Hearn Hearn are well equipped to assist business owners and project teams in successfully achieving certification in an economical, efficient, and timely manner. Consult with us today, and together, we'll help make the built environment healthier, more comfortable, and most importantly, eco-friendly. Hearn Hearn Consulting brings you Hearn Hearn Green Building.
Okay, these ones are busy. Yeah, this one. Okay, Webex, could you turn the temperature down 3 degrees, please? Okay, Webex, could you extend the meeting by 20 minutes, please? Okay, love now, so see you next week. Have a good weekend.
This webinar is made possible through our partnership with Webex by Cisco, Hearn Hearn Consulting and the European Chamber of the Commerce of the Philippines. I'm Maricris Serino-Hosan, Director for Office Services, your host and moderator this morning. As we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, the workplaces that we will all go back to may be drastically different from the ones we have been accustomed with. There have been plenty of discussions about hybrid work, health and wellness features, collaborative spaces, and indoor air quality. But how will we manage to integrate all these in today's workplaces? How do we convince office workers to return to work and, more importantly, ensure that their health and well-being will be protected? In this webinar, we will explore how design and technology can work hand in hand in making sure our workplaces are cohesive, safe, collaborative, and more importantly, fun places to return to and have our work done. But before we get started, let's go over a few items that will ensure that we have a seamless Webex experience. You may have noticed that you can't unmute your mic or turn on your video function. This might concern you when it comes to the open forum, but not to worry. If you have questions that you'd like us to address, simply type them in the Q&A button in your control panel and I will read them aloud for any of the speakers to answer. If we are unable to answer your questions during the webinar, do not worry. Kindly indicate your full name when you send in your questions and we will contact you after this webinar and send you the answer. So now it's out of the way. Let's begin our today's program by introducing our speakers. Our first speaker is Colliers Associate Director of Workplace Advisory for Asia, Shona Tay. Shona is responsible for the successful delivery of all change management and workplace study projects across South Asia with oversight over Hong Kong and Japan. She regularly conducts workshops, interviews, surveys for various stakeholders to identify gaps between current office environment and future vision for the new workplace and provide in-depth analysis and insights from data collected to achieve space optimization. Hi, Shona. Our first speaker is Roger Sarmiento of Hearn Hearn Consulting. Roger is highly trained environmentally sustainable design consultant holding a master's degree in architectural science from the University of Sydney, one of the top universities for architecture worldwide. He also holds multiple accreditations from various green building organizations, including the US Green Building Council, Green Building Council of Australia, and the International Well Building Institute, and the Philippines Green Building Council. With more than 6 years of experience in managing projects across countries, including Japan, Indonesia, and the Philippines, Roger is proficient consultant in helping projects teams achieve green building certifications with excellence, lean workflow, and cost-effective strategies. Hi, Roger. Our third speaker is the Director of Collaboration Sales for ASEAN for Cisco, Shiv Nayar. Shiv leads a team of specialist sellers helping Cisco customers transform their workplaces and workforces to suit the needs in hybrid work. This team drives solutions and experiences that are secure, inclusive, agnostic across platforms and location. Shiv is a seasoned professional in the tech industry with over 25 years of experience in IT and enterprise sales marketing across the Asia-Pacific region. For the first presentation, let me invite Shona on screen. Turn it over to you, Shona.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? Cool. Thank you for that. So just looking at the sustainability in the workplace design as an overview, if there's any question, please feel free to ask. It's a very easygoing session today. On the next slide, please. The new work experience, I think, in the post-pandemic era have actually changed quite a fair bit. So we really want to take a really quick look over how the work has actually affected us, how the pandemic affected us, and overall what has been changing in the workplace. The demand for flexible work, I think, in the post-pandemic era has really changed quite a fair bit. I remember 2 years ago, before the pandemic, right when the pandemic started, everybody's asking me, Shona, how do I actually, get my staff, my employees to work from home effectively? Right now, it really is a different conversation. I have the most common question posted to me is, Shona, how do I get people back to the office? So looking at the demands for the flexible work across Asia is really quite different. Everybody adapted to the COVID quite differently. The flexible work demand is also not very congruous, but we see that in Manila, in Singapore, in India, Japan, these are some of the places that has got a very high demand for flexible work. And what does that mean, and what does that, how does that actually affect our workplace design? We could look at it in the next couple of slides. So as we mentioned, the return to office strategy really differs company to company. It really depends on your culture. We see some companies who are focused on the office first. That's how they function best. That's how they actually do their work more productively. But a majority of the companies that we are talking to right now are really looking at the hybrid, where you work a few days at home and then work from the office for a couple of days. So that really looks at your space optimization in a completely new light. In the past, space optimization focused only on activity-based working, where people will come in, they will share the desk, usually on the 80% or maybe potentially a 60% for some companies. But now we are adding on the layer of working from home as well. So this really gives us a very, very good base for a strong space optimization for a lot of companies. But definitely there are companies out there who are already, because of the business function as well as their nature of the business, they are on the virtual first. Next slide. Thank you. We see a lot of younger people telling us that, hey, the environment is really getting bad, where I'm really concerned. It's very easy to dismiss all this as, oh, they're young, they'll be okay, they'll be fine, they'll get used to it. But we do see that in some of the studies that has been conducted a couple of years ago, in Philippines, for example, the anxiety, or what we call the eco-anxiety, is really, really high, right? So that's about now 92%. Looking at that group of people who experience the eco-anxiety and looking at the age group that the survey was conducted on, based on about 10,000 people between 16 and 25, this group of people at the end of the day will be the future leaders of our workplace, right? Because they are at that age where they're coming out of school, or they just joined the workforce. So when we look at the design of the workplace, taking into consideration that looming anxiety that comes with their generation, we really want to relook into how we design the workspace, how we are considering some of the factors that is driving this change, and how we actually could meet the kind of demand that is part of the mentality of the younger generation, the future leaders of our organizations. We talk a little bit about hybrid work. So a lot of people consider hybrid work as, oh, I'm just working from home for a couple of days, or I'm in the office for a couple of days. But to be honest, I think hybrid work has got a lot of impact on how we look at the design of the space. It is also about how you do the support, your productivity, the policy that goes around, governing the hybrid work, number of days that you actually have to work from office and number of days that you are actually working from home affects your productivity, affects the way people actually socialize or collaborate in a office environment, right? So the design of the space also changes because, again, the role of office have changed so much in the last 2 years that we really need to take that into consideration. One of the biggest call is to have people in the office, but improve the engagement because, again, they are spending a couple of days away from office, working from home. So they want to make sure that the culture portion is taken into consideration, your office occupancy, and all the technology, which I'm sure the rest of the panelists will talk through a little bit more, is really, really important. And we'll go through that in a couple of slides to look at how all this, when it comes together, does affect the way we design the office, because it's no longer just giving them the office as they used to have, standard workstation with a dedicated workspace, and then purely on the meeting room, and just that two options. Now, the way we look at office is looking at collaboration spaces, your technology that goes with it, how healthy is your environment, and what is the pull to bring people back into the office. Couple of the drivers that we see in the market right now. As I mentioned earlier, there is definitely a very high appetite for hybrid working right now. This is one of those talent war question, right? If you don't provide the pool for people to join your organization, then you're losing the war for that talent that you really require to get the best people out there to work for you. So looking at the hybrid working, the appetite for hybrid working, it's almost a norm right now. We see certain companies saying that, hey, we still definitely want people to purely work from the office. You can, not that you can't, you can, but then it means that you possibly could be losing out some of the talents that could go to your competitors who are really offering the kind of work-life balance that people are looking for. So that is a big driver that we see in the market. Another one that we see is the future workforce, as you mentioned, with the higher eco-anxiety. People will choose organizations where their philosophy, their ideals, their vision is very similar. You wouldn't join a company that is so contrasting to what you believe, right? So companies are now looking at more of the LEED building, green buildings, as well as the ESG goals. ESG goals of the company right now is really important. That has come up to the forefront a lot. We see governments and countries having the environment, conversation. So companies are now having a lot of pressure, as well as the environmentally conscious, to know that the ESG goal is going to impact the way they choose the building. It's going to impact the way they design the space as well. So looking at all that, definitely space optimization is really key. I keep repeating space optimization because at the end of the day, when you have a very traditional office, you could have everybody dedicated to the workstation. You have a couple of meeting rooms. However, when we look at space optimization, it's really looking at how do I design the office with people working from home with limited space, right? Because you're reducing your footprint, limited space. And how do I make this space more effective now than before? So when people are in the office, the kind of activities that we're encouraging are the ones that we want to see in the office itself. Couple of factors to consider. Really, this is just food for thoughts. Next slide. Couple of factors to consider when we look at the future workplace design. People are expecting a healthier workplace. We want to have people coming in and leaving the office actually healthier, right? So we look at your air quality, the water quality, as well as other environmental features. Reduction of travel footprint has been also coming up to the forefront a little bit more. This again goes back into the hybrid working model, because when people are traveling less on the public transport or in the car, they actually reduces that travel footprint. But apart from that, we are also hearing that companies are now a little bit more concerned about, do they have bicycle parking lots, for example, because they're encouraging their employees to be more healthy, so cycle to work as an example, or the cars that are using the e-charger, right? So if your building doesn't have that facility, again, that is one of the major considerations for some of the clients that we work with. And those kind of electric car is really, really important and really, really popular. So looking at the healthier workplace, it is also about the design of, the green features that you're bringing in. That doesn't really just mean that it's a green wall. Everybody considers a green wall, but there are companies now considering, hey, maybe that green wall could be a edible green wall, as an example. So again, we see how companies are really focusing on the design of the workspace, fitting into their ESG goal, and definitely looking at more sustainable materials, eco-friendly fit out, and having to make sure that the process of working in the office, such as printing as an example, we see a lot of companies with very high printing demand right now, looking at digitalizing everything. So then your operationally, your space for your printer, where you used to have 20 printers in the office, they might have a very drastic reduction to go down to 8. So you therefore also do not necessarily need such a big utility area, shared services, right? So these are all some of the things that need to be considered when we look at the workplace design. We talked a little bit also about the agile workplace itself. Finding the balance between the remote and physical work in the office is really important. Companies now look at a lot more on how do I do the scheduling? How do I make sure that when people are in the office, it's very productive? And because of the pandemic, we don't know what the future holds. I think there isn't anyone that could come out to say that I have a crystal ball that it's going to be, telling you exactly where we're going to end up, in the next 2 years. I haven't heard anything like that. If anybody have, just let me know. But we definitely see that companies are requiring their workspace to be a lot more flexible, more configurable, so that they are able to meet the demands of the unknown, right? Because again, like we mentioned, we don't know where this is going to end up, or whether there's going to be another potentially future pandemic in the future. So people need to be very agile, not just in terms of your mindset, in terms of the way we work, but also on the office space demand to have things that are very configurable, things that are very easy to adjust to the new demand that might be coming our way as well. So new ways of working, I think that is something that people use that phrase a lot. That essentially from at least from the clients that we have worked with, look at two main things, right? One is your hybrid working that we talk about. The other one is your activity-based working. Activity-based working isn't new, but with the added layer of the hybrid working, we see a lot more demand for collaboration spaces. So when companies now look at the design of the office, it's a little bit less focused on formal collaboration spaces, which is your typical enclosed meeting spaces, a little bit less focus on the workstation, but more on the collaborative spaces, more on the other kind of new spaces where they look at maybe a space for recharge, space for relaxation, space for meditation. And that again is very much working towards having a healthier workspace, having a more sustainable workplace where things are very stressful, but you actually have a space for you to go in, take a deep breath, think through things, and then go back into your work. So, this is all kind of integrated in the way we work right now. Looking at the employee experience, I think this really, at the end of the day, is probably the most important piece, because if they have a very good experience of working from home, then what is our pull factor to bring them back to the office, right? We created an amazing workplace, an amazing office. We want people to be back in the office to really, integrate, to really collaborate, and we don't want to lose that collaborative culture that a lot of companies have when they are actually physically in the office, face to face, before the pandemic started. So recreating that experience is really difficult. So we need to really see how workplace is being designed to create that sense of, wow, this is an amazing, amazing place to work. This is an amazing experience. Every time I come back into the office, I get that fresh sense of, burst of energy because I'm talking to my colleagues. I'm actually collaborating with everybody. To create that experience that cannot be replaced online is definitely one of the biggest challenge from my perspective. The Internet of Workplace is quite similar to the Internet of Technology, I think, but this is more on the confine of the workplace itself. Here we look at the digital integration for sure. Digital integration, has been very, very much in demand. People want to make sure that everything is all integrated. When I go into the office, if I want to have a meeting, I need to know that I can easily integrate my meeting schedule with all the technology that is there at a click of a button or just via a voice command, as an example. So these are all the things that if they have the experience in the retail space, in some of the experience that they have outside, people are starting to wonder, hey, if it's so convenient for me to, and such a wonderful experience that I have in the retail shops or at home, why can't I actually have it in the workplace? Why hasn't it actually caught up with us, right? So a more reactive and proactive workplace that could actually sense the demand from the employees and actually do the automation to adjust whether it's the lighting, whether it's the air quality, whether it is the connection to a meeting that makes it very, very seamless, very, very easy. So that is the kind of experience, experience that we really want to recreate in the office itself. The last one is on the eco-friendly fit out. A lot of companies I know have already started on this quite a while ago, even before the pandemic started. But now I think with the eco anxiety on the rise, it is going to be something that people will consider that to be more of an essential. So we are definitely looking at furniture that are more environmentally friendly materials. Are they using recycled wood? Is your carpet 100% recyclable? Is your ESG goals that you have laid out translated in your fit out, translated in the choice of the buildings that you have, translated in your home and office working policy? So all that comes together as a package, rather than doing only a portion of it and say that actually we are very eco-friendly. It's actually not that way. I think it's a very holistic approach that needs to be done. And that's how I think the future of workplace in terms of your sustainability and how that's going to affect the workplace design is going to come about. Thank you.
Thank you, Shona. Very insightful presentation. Since your last slide was about design, let me invite back on screen Roger for the second presentation. Turn it over to you, Roger.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time and interest in joining this webinar. My particular presentation would be about how to address the COVID-19 disease in the post-pandemic workplace. We are Hearn Hearn Consulting. Hearn Hearn Green Building is our service arm, which caters to buildings that are wanting to pursue green building certification. And here are our team's qualifications. We are specialized in 5 rating tools, including the most prominent ones: LEED, WELL, EDGE, our local green building rating tool, Verde, and Green Star, which is an Australian local. We have been in the practice of certifying buildings for more than 8 years, and over the years have completed and certified more than 15 projects across Asia, for a total of roughly around 3 million square feet of certified spaces. Again, I am Roger Sarmiento. I am the current sustainability manager in the company. I'm a registered and licensed architect here in the Philippines. And I just recently finished my master's in architectural science and sustainable design in the University of Sydney under the Australia Award Scholarship. Before studying, I've been certifying buildings for more than 6 years, and over the years have accumulated several professional accreditations, including LEED, WELL, Green Star, and Verde. I would like to begin with discussing what sick building syndrome is, as this will be a central theme of the presentation. So what it is a condition where occupants of a building tend to report illnesses that seems to be related to the time they spend indoors. So this is not a new concept. It's been coined by the World Health Organization in the late 80s, and is believed and is known to be caused by poor ventilation and also remedied by proper ventilation. Bad ventilation, the malpractice of providing poor ventilation is believed to have originated from the oil embargo of the 70s, where more affluent countries in the West, more developed and affluent countries like the States and Canada experienced oil scarcity and hence price hikes. So designers at the time experimented on how to make buildings more efficient. And one of their strategies is to limit outdoor air intake, hence preserving the indoor design conditions. What they didn't know was providing fresh air as low as 5 CFM per person would make the building sick, as we will not be able to flush indoor contaminants. So harmful particles from building finishes and materials, and even from occupants, tend to accumulate indoors and is not flushed out once occupants inhale that. So they tend to be infected by the sick building itself. So an example of this you might have already experienced is some of your workmates maybe come in with a cold, and then several days after, even if you don't have a personal interaction with that sick person, you tend to get the virus yourself or maybe some of your workmates. So that's basically because the air inside the building is not properly flushed. You don't have enough fresh air, so basically the virus of that cold is just floating around in your atmosphere. And imagine if that cold virus is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? The COVID-19 virus. So that basically sums up our anxiety to go back to the office and be around all these people and then inhale the air they're breathing. And that actually poses a new challenge in the building design, because usually sick building syndrome happens in old buildings where the ventilation design is not up to par to the present. But even certified buildings now are seen to be challenged by the virus. Even new buildings are empty their workspaces because everyone's working from home and basically not using the space. So the fact that outdoor air counters the spread of the virus is proven by several studies. One of those studies I would just like to highlight a study from the University of Sydney IEQ lab, or Indoor Environmental Quality Lab, headed by our professor, Richard Didier. So it's very interesting because we have a mannequin in our IEQ lab. The mannequin's name is Laura Palmer. So what they did was they installed a mechanical gadget in Laura Palmer that enables her to breathe like a human being. And then they used tracer gas with a similar molecular characteristics as the COVID virus to simulate how the virus interacts with the space and how Laura Palmer might inhale it and get infected, right? So they tested it on several types of rooms, like indoor classroom, outdoor, al fresco dining areas. And they have several findings. The first one is that over 6 meters distance, which is really, it's not really expected that over 6 meters distance, the concentration of virus doesn't really significantly vary. So that kind of puts our social distancing protocol out the window, because as we all know, the 2-meter social distancing requirement usually just considers the larger particles that drop faster than the aerosols that spread in the air. So once it's in the air, it doesn't vary significantly over 6 meters of distance. They also tested several masks, and they found out that N95 indeed is the best option for us to filter the air we breathe. And their most significant finding is that outdoors, the threat of the virus is significantly lower. And if we imitate outdoor conditions indoors, or basically if we flush out air frequently with enough amount, we basically significantly eliminate the threat of spreading the virus in our workplaces. And that also supports the finding of this seminal study by Lee et al. In the year 2020. This study is still when even experts are basically debating if the virus is airborne. So what you can see on your screen is a restaurant in Guangzhou, China. It's an isometric view, and what you can see on the back is a cyan-colored representation of their CFD analysis. So as you can see on the blue arrow, that's basically the supply air. It kind of does a turbulence at the back. It bounces back and then sucked again by this air handling unit. So basically, this is a recirculated air. And what they found was the air supply there was only 2.2 CFM, or cubic feet per minute per person. So as we discussed earlier, 5 CFM would already give you a sick building. So what more if it's less, right? And some of their findings include that there's the patients are infected through the air. There's no fomites involved. Fomites meaning if the virus is attached to a surface, you touch the surface and touch your face, you can still get infected with that, as several studies also show. But in this particular case study, it's really evident that they got it through the air they breathe. And if we look at this isometric floor plan in plan view, you can see there the index patient A1, the violet one. So before this event, there's only one positive person, and that person spread it to 9 different people or patients. So that is because they're not flushing the air. As you can see on the upper left of the floor plan, there's an exhaust fan there, but during the time of this event, the exhaust fans are closed. And they have fresh air supply, as you can see on the bottom of the floor plan. They have a wall-mounted one on the left side, and then basically just infiltration from the elevator shaft on the lower right side. So as we all know, that's not enough to flush out the virus. So interestingly, even the tables as you can see there, T18 and T17, basically adjacent tables, none of them got infected. So this highlights the fact that it's really because of that recirculation of air and the constant exposure to the virus. Should that air have been expelled and exhausted, so maybe we wouldn't have that many patients during that time. So knowing all this about ventilation, that is really important. So what can we do in the future of workspaces to change this and to basically to prepare ourselves for the next pandemic? It is not the last pandemic we will experience. There will be more in the future. So one of our recommendations in Hearn Hearn Green Building is basically to pursue green building certification. Or if you don't want to pursue certification, at least use the green building rating tools as design guide, as the rating tools already incorporates the best practices in the industry at the moment in terms of ventilation and in terms of every design aspect, including lighting or daylight in all of this. And also, as you can see here in the infographic released by the World Green Building Council, they also prioritize ventilation as one of the most important design feature of a healthy office. It has a strong business case too. I mean, it's not, we're not selling green building rating tool as, just to make your spaces healthy and more beautiful. It has a strong business case too, as it will increase productivity. Actually, some studies now show that the main benefit of green buildings is not for its energy saving or utility cost reduction. It's more of happier occupants, more productivity, especially in the business aspect of it. Employees are the main assets of businesses. They contribute bulk of a business's operational expenditure. Imagine 85% of your expenses for businesses literally goes to salaries and benefits, and only the second to that is only rent, and then I think only 1% goes to utility costs. So as you can see, if we invest in our employees, which is the bulk of our expenses in businesses, then that's a higher return of investment as compared to saving utility costs is great. We're all for it, but these recent studies show that productivity is the most key benefit of pursuing green building rating tools and certification. But this is all well and good for new buildings. We can design from scratch. We can ask our designers, put in ample daylight, design our mechanical ventilation with filters and all that. But most of us will be going back to work in existing spaces, in existing offices. So what can we do to convince our employees to come back to the office? So basically what we will be looking at a case study from BKM of how they transform their workplace and convince their employees to go back. They divided their workplace transformation into 4 key steps, which we will discuss in detail on the following slides. So number 1 is to identify risks in the space. It's very important for you to know your floor plan and what are the low density areas, what are the high density areas, meeting rooms, for example, cafeteria, where you can't follow social distancing protocols. And the very important thing they did here was to survey the occupants or the employees. We all know, we've just discussed earlier, that our best defense against the COVID-19 is proper ventilation. But some of our employees may not be aware of that, and it's not everyone knows about it. But to be honest, going back to work is somewhat a psychological issue. So we ask our employees, what do you want to see for you to be less anxious to go back to the office? And the survey results they got, there's quite a few, but I just selected the top 4 survey results. 80% of their employees wants to see thorough cleaning and frequent cleaning. The second is hands-free sanitizing options. Phased re-entry, meaning we try it out first, we test the waters, ask 10% of the employees to go back first, see how that goes. And then if all goes well, no one gets infected, no COVID, then we invite 20% more until we reach 100% occupancy. And then lastly, their employees, BKM's employees, wants to see social distancing protocols followed. So what they did was they removed a few chairs, as you can see on the X marks on the floor plan, just to follow social distancing protocols, and even they rerouted the flow of traffic, the pedestrian traffic, to avoid two-way hallways where literally you can't do social distancing. So, and then next step is they identified places where they need to provide barriers, just to, resources wise, we can't just put in barriers everywhere. It needs to be studied carefully. So this is just to increase the separation between occupants that are not 6 feet or 2 meters apart. So they identified areas where they want to put barriers. Acrylic barriers work best because their employees want thorough cleaning. So acrylic barriers is very easy to clean. You just spray alcohol on there, wipe it with a wet wipe, and then you're all good for the day. And then lastly, we want to communicate that with our employees, because again, this might be a psychological thing. I mean, even myself, when I started working here in Hearn Consulting, I didn't know that they work face to face, but when I see their huge air purifier in the open workspace, very spacious office, that anxiety tends to go away. It's not immediate, but it's kind of like a process. Like I said, it's almost like a psychological issue. And then like a floor plan like this, if you put it and mount it somewhere like maybe an elevator lobby or somewhere everyone can see it, and then for them to realize, oh, we're providing this much hand sanitizer, and we're providing all these one-way traffic hallways, then that will definitely help them to be more comfortable and less anxious in the workspace. So in addition, we've listed down here several quick wins, so you can apply it to your office relatively quickly. Some of this have already been part of our everyday life since the pandemic, like the hands-free sanitizer and temperature check. You can see that in malls now. The barriers, you can see that even in banks now, where between you and the teller, you already have this barrier, but then you tend to talk directly to the hole provided, but kind of defeats the purpose. The portable filters are already around for several years. The technology is out there already. It's relatively cheap to buy one now. It's relatively quick to just buy a small one, put it in your meeting room, plug it in, and then you're already a lot more better than without it. Vegetation could also help. Beautifies your space and also filters carbon dioxide. The last two is a bit questionable, but as the central theme of this discussion is basically ventilation. I mean, if you're in a home office, every office is different. If you have an operable window, by all means, as what we've discussed earlier, that's our best defense against COVID. It's basically going to flush out indoor air, provide us fresh outdoor air. It costs nothing, but in this slide, we rated the cost of it as high because, I mean, if you don't have operable windows, reinstalling one, replacing your fixed windows now would be very costly, but it's very effective. And also filtration, not all ventilation systems and mechanical ventilation systems can accommodate filter. It depends on the design of your entire mechanical system. Your fan power might not be able to accommodate very dense filters, so you really need to ask your mechanical designer what filters could you install in your current mechanical ventilation system. So to summarize, here are 5 key takeaways from this presentation. First is proper ventilation plays a key role in sustainable and healthy workspace design. Business owners take care of the employees through building design. Pursue green building certification, even if you're a new or an existing building. Occupant survey would determine actionable steps in workplace transformation, and quick solutions against COVID-19 do work. So, if you want to transform your place relatively quickly, those are relatively easy to just implement. Thank you for your time. Again, we are Hearn Hearn Consulting and Hearn Hearn Green Building. Hope you picked up a thing or two in that presentation. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you so much, Roger. For our last presentation, let me invite back on screen Shiv Nayar of Cisco. Hi, Shiv.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to share with the team some of the work that Cisco is doing around building what our vision of a hybrid workplace, and really integrating into the theme of this webinar is how do we do that sustainably. So I'll spend about 10 to 12 minutes just talking to you about our vision of the hybrid workplace, what collaboration really means, the impact that it would have on your workplace design, and some of the considerations you'll need to take into account. So it's not just about the employee experience, but also about cost considerations, real estate repurposing considerations, and so on. So hopefully this is useful. Sessions being recorded, and our team is happy to answer questions after this webinar. So our definition of hybrid work is really allow any employee to work and collaborate seamlessly and effectively across locations of their choice, so whether it's home or office or a cafe, timings of their preference, right? So scheduled versus unscheduled, on devices and hardware that suit their needs the best, right? And in the past, it was one size fits all. We believe that true hybrid work should allow any employee to access their content and their collaboration needs through devices that work best for them. And lastly, works across platforms. So I work for Cisco, and we have a fantastic platform, which is Webex. But then we realize that many of our customers use other platforms. So we believe that true hybrid work should actually work across platforms. But then the key goal of hybrid work is, allowing these employees to stay connected to their organization, mission, goals, their colleagues. And you heard from the previous 2 speakers about how severely that's been challenged during the pandemic, right? And so when you think about hybrid work, you need to think about how can you actually get these conflicting objectives achieved while staying true to your budget considerations, your IT considerations, and your security considerations, right? So the key question is really, what does it take for you to be successful in a hybrid work environment, right? And for that, I think the answer that we found is that the workplace needs to work harder to earn back the trust and respect of your employees. Now, in the past, workplace design was by nature something that was an afterthought, or it was perhaps not the key priority for an organization, right? Now, post-pandemic, we're realizing that to get employees back into the office safely, securely, and compliantly, I think there has to be a significant amount of thought and effort put into workplace design. So let me just talk to you about our vision of a sustainable hybrid work environment, right? And what does it actually mean? So there's 3 elements, as you can see on this slide. So first of all, technology, we believe, can be used to make the office more informative. And we don't mean just fixed content like company news and safety tips and reminders to wash your hands. Employees are going to be hesitant about returning to the office. So we need to keep them informed about the status of the workplace, and you need to really win their trust, right? So things like real-time information, current occupancy of buildings, notification if there's a large event, or even things like, hey, is the car park full, right? Or perhaps there's an emergency health concern, right? And this information is not just in the building, but you'll need to have this information available at home when the employee is making their decision to actually where to work, right, throughout the day. The second piece that we see is that the office has to be more intelligent, right? Basically, we just need to take the friction out of going to the workplace. So for example, let's provide the employee a way to book a desk prior to heading to the office, and then personalizing that workspace to the employee's preference. Or perhaps showing real-time availability of meeting rooms, or as you move from your hot desk or your laptop into a meeting room, the meeting seamlessly transfers so that you don't have to rejoin the meeting in the room. Or even just helping employees find co-workers, right? With a new trend that we're seeing is hot desking, pervasive hot desking. How do you then help employees find another employee in a large office? How do you show wayfinding solutions for employees who perhaps are new to the organization, need to find the cafe or perhaps the restroom or the first aid station? Lastly, it's collaboration, right? And I'll talk a bit more about collaboration in the subsequent slides, but it's basically the workplace still will be the destination for collaboration. There's only so much you can do with 100% remote workers. So you'll have to think about dedicating an increasing amount of square footage to both formal and informal collaboration spaces. And Shona talked about this earlier in her presentation. The world of the past, where it used to be scheduled meetings in your Outlook calendar, one after the other, is gone largely, right? It's no longer 100% scheduled. So you'll have to think about how do you enable your employees to jump into an impromptu, unscheduled collaboration activity. And the third piece is video conferencing technology. And I'll give you a real life example about our own transformation to video. And these have to be available not just in your walled spaces, right? Your meeting rooms, your closed off spaces, but also in open plan. And so I'll cover all of these topics, but let me start with the last one, which is collaboration. So there are three facets of collaboration that we think are critical, right? The first one is this slide that you see here. So know why you're collaborating. Now, in the past, collaboration was another word for a meeting. So we were meeting for meeting's sake, not knowing exactly why we were meeting. Perhaps sometimes we'd have a pre-meeting and a post-meeting. But in the new world, employees don't have that much time. And when you're working from home, you have challenges of your personal time and work-life balance and so on. So really, collaboration is about defining the purpose of your meeting. So it's purpose-driven meetings. And on this slide, you see some of the examples of collaboration meetings that we've identified. And so you need to take this as the first point of consideration when you're designing your workplace. And really also all of our collaboration solutions are designed around either addressing one or more of these activities. The other two pieces that I do want to talk about is pervasive video, right? And many of you have seen versions of this statistic where you've seen that in the past, you only had 8% of the meetings meeting participants remote because most of them are coming into the office, right? And going forward, it's going to be flipped on its head. You will have 98% of meetings with at least one remote participant. So how do you ensure that that remote participant set is feeling included in your meeting experience, right? And is able to contribute, and more than feeling included, is able to contribute effectively to drive an outcome which would have been the same as if that employee was in the office. The key critical success factor to getting that experience is video, right? And employees love video-enabled spaces, right? It gives me as a remote worker the flexibility to dial into a meeting. If I'm in the office, it gives me the flexibility to join my workers from anywhere across the world. But then take a different filter or a lens to it. Facilities manager considered, the ROI of video enablement. What is the cost of enabling all these video spaces versus the ROI, right? What's the return? And that's tougher to sometimes visualize. So as an example, I'm going to show you how we managed the video transformation in our own office. So let me just build up this slide. So this is a view of the Cisco Singapore office, is the office where I work, and I've only been into the office about 10 times in the last 1 year. But this is a view prior to the pandemic. So when you look at the office estate that we had in terms of work spaces, collaboration spaces, and not just meeting rooms, all collaboration spaces, we had 263 meeting rooms, right? So 54 were video enabled and the others were not. Now, interesting statistic is you look at the usage on the right, right? On the x-axis on the top, you've got group sizes, right? So number of people meeting, and on the vertical axis, you've got the room size. So the first ring you'll notice in the dark green box is that medium rooms are used the most, but actually by groups that don't need the larger medium rooms, right? So they're being used by groups of 1, 2, or 3 people sitting in a typical 10-seater medium room, right? And they're probably better off served in a smaller room. So we did some digging, and then we found out based on our research, there simply weren't enough small rooms, right? And that was the first reason. And the second reason was medium and large rooms were likely to be video enabled, right? And so they preferred to work in that setup compared to a small room which had no video facilities. So what happened after that? In 2019, we underwent a massive transformation. We reduced the number of meeting rooms from 263 to 200. We ensured that all 200 were video enabled. So you have, in the pink box, you see 100 collaboration spaces, which are open spaces, and then 100 video enabled rooms. And then you'll see an interesting thing that happens. So first of all, the gray box and the left to the dark blue box, you'll notice that more people started meeting in smaller groups, right? So first of all, the trend went from 70 to 92%, right? And then the small meeting room occupancy, which is the light green to the dark green box, increased dramatically once they were video enabled. Right? And that's just, the reason's obvious, right? A small room, you may have one attendee there, but you can host 100 attendees virtually, right? So you don't need to occupy a medium-sized room and take up space. So what's the impact, really? So the impact on employee experience was great, but the impact on facilities was even more dramatic, right? So we did two things. We repurposed the medium rooms into smaller ones, and then we video enabled them. So we saved a substantial amount of money, as well as saving space, and of course, energy reduction and so on. Right, so this is a real-life example of what video enablement can actually do from a cost or an investment perspective. Because we often get asked this question: what's the ROI? Yeah, we get the employee experience, but what does it mean in numbers? So hopefully this helps you quantify it and perhaps visualize this better. The third piece of our collaboration platform is choice, right? So the first one is around what is the purpose of your collaboration. So whether it's brainstorming or whether it's having a goal-driven meeting. The second piece is around video, and the third piece is around choice, right? So we have a plethora of choices that you see here. So across individual spaces, collaboration spaces, boardrooms, meeting rooms, and I'm not here to talk about all of these. I mean, our sales teams can give you the pitch much better than I can. But I want to just pick 3 red box areas that I'd like to spend a few minutes on. And the reason I've picked these is because this is what we're hearing from our customers the most, right? As customers make the transformation, it's not about meeting rooms as much as, hey, how do I address hot desking? Like, how do I get 1 to 2 or 2 or 3 people in a huddle space for a quick 10-minute collaboration session? Or how do I manage my open collaboration spaces? So I'll just spend a minute talking about each of these. So the first one's hot desking, right? Now, hot desking, as is familiar to most of you, we've reduced our square footage, so we don't have 100% of our employees. So for example, the Singapore office probably has about 800 employees. We have desks only for about 300, right? And we're assuming that not everybody is going to be in the office every day. But then when I do come in, I don't even have an assigned desk, right? So we've got to ensure there's a solution that allows you to hot desk easily. And so here's our solution, which is basically a device called the Desk Hub, which acts as your one-point reservation system, as well as syncing to your calendar. It's got inbuilt sensors, so it can monitor things like air quality and noise and humidity and temperature. It can also do desk booking and so on. So this is our solution. Of course, there are competing solutions out there, but this is one of the things you'll need to consider as you transform your workplace. The second piece, which again, Shona talked about, is informal collaboration spaces, right? So not every meeting is goal or purpose driven. Sometimes you just want to brainstorm. Sometimes you need to make a decision and get to an outcome. And this is where our collaboration spaces can be enabled with something like a Board Pro, which is like a giant whiteboarding device, but not just that. It's actually a pretty smart AI-enabled device that can actually double up as your meeting solution, as well as handle pre-meeting and post-meeting tasks for you as well. And then the last piece that I want to talk about is huddle spaces, right? So in huddle spaces, our solution is video workstations. This is one example of a device that you can use in those huddle spaces. So this is a new product called the Desk Mini. It's a highly portable, comes in 5 colors, has all the features of our bigger desk products, which are 24 and 27 inch. This is a little smaller and more lightweight. So it allows you to carry it from the place where you're sitting into a huddle space, share your content, perhaps collaborate, whiteboard on the device with your colleagues, and then bring it back, right, when you're done. Also, a great work from home device. So after you're done for the day, you can use it as your Bluetooth speaker, perhaps stream music and so on. Right. So these are just some of the 3 solutions. And we do have a whole bunch of others, and I'm not going to spend time on this, but there's a whole series of products and solutions that allow various configurations of workplace solutions. So I'm not going to go through that. I do want to spend, again, a minute or so just talking about Cisco's collaboration solutions and some features that are common to it. The first piece is all of our hardware solutions are actually now compatible with all platforms. You remember in the beginning of the session, I mentioned we've got to think about how to enable employees to join not just Webex, which we think is great, but also then to join Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings or Google meetings. So all of our devices will soon be enabled with that green button that you see there. One button to push, one button to join is what we call it, right? So you just push it and you join the meeting. If you get out of your Webex meeting, you join your next Teams meeting by pressing that same button, right? And this is enabled in all of our devices that I showed you on the couple of slides earlier. Also gives you a rich experience of dual screen with Microsoft Teams or Zoom. You can do your roster or layout controls and so on. Key thing, no need to reboot your systems, right? So, and by the way, I must tell you this, some of our devices haven't been rebooted in like 7 years. I met a customer the other day who told us, I haven't powered off your device for 5.5 years. So it just stays on, right? And the updates just come in, it boots overnight, and that's it. The customer doesn't need to do anything. So from a sustainability perspective, the hardware is built to last, and it's a company we acquired from Norway called Tandberg, a very highly reputed hardware company. And we basically just let them run the devices a piece on their own, right? And so they keep coming out with these hugely sustainable products, which obviously once you buy, lasts you for a lifetime. It's a challenge for us in sales because we want to obviously refresh those devices, and the customers are saying, we don't need to, they're working fine, even after 6 years. But this is pretty key, right? In your customer environment, you have multiple platforms. So just remember, our devices can join any of those platforms. We are not tied to Webex, for instance, right? The other piece that I just built that slide too fast. The other piece I want to talk about, and I won't cover all of this on the slide, just some of the common features. I'll focus on the ones on the right. So facial recognition and tagging, it's an optional feature that you can turn on because there are privacy concerns. So depending on the organization's strategy, you can turn that on. And why does that help? You can actually tag users of that meeting in that meeting with their names by syncing to the directory, right? So for example, you see an example there, you probably cannot see it on the slide, a little green box with the name underneath. And so you can turn this on as an optional feature, right? The other way this helps is to actually give you a capacity alert. So every room has a defined capacity. With COVID, that got shrunk by 20, 30, 40, 50%. So you can actually define that for each room, and these sensors then allow you to tell when the room capacity is being reached. So it informs the attendees in the room as well as informs, for example, IT or facilities. There's some other features here which I won't be covering today. So I'll take a pause here and just change gears. While collaboration solutions are great, you also have to remember that Cisco is actually the foundational networking company for most of our commercial customers, right? So it's not just about the collaboration devices, which you see on the left here, but we set the foundation for the company's connectivity. So network and switching, sensors and cameras and analytics. So cameras and sensors allow for data capture, and analytics allow for the monitoring, real-time monitoring, and so on, right? So I'll talk to you about 3 use cases and I'll wrap up in a couple of minutes. So the first one really is on building safety, right? How do you use the entire breadth of the Cisco portfolio to track building safety? And then sensors, and then space booking, ad hoc versus scheduled. Right, so here's a simple example of how you can use the power of all the 4 platforms that you saw on the previous slide and integrating our analytics platform. There's 2 of them. There's one called Webex Control Hub, which basically is an overarching single pane of glass for all of our devices. So it collects all of the information and data from our sensors integrated into our devices, right, into the collaboration devices. And then we have another product called Cisco DNA Spaces, which actually allows you to collect the information from the Meraki sensors on the previous slide, right? And so these are IoT objects that can be spread around your office. They're feeding real-time information back on things like capacity, how many people are in a particular space at a particular time, plus environmental metrics, temperature, humidity, air quality, noise level, and so on, right? Now, you combine the 2, you actually get very rich analytics and insights. So you can do things like capacity control, traffic management, manage your camera feeds, and things like that. So building safety is actually, safety, capacity, and so on is a key use case for many of our customers. And here's an example of the sensors that are built into our devices. almost all of our device portfolio have inbuilt sensors. So you don't have to pay extra to buy sensors for your meeting room because they're already inbuilt in there. And here's a specific example of a particular device, which is called the Room Navigator. So think of this as your in-meeting room panel, which allows you to join a meeting or allows you to share content and so on. But in this particular slide, I'm not showing you that. I'm showing you about all of the sensors that are built into that particular product, right? And then that feeds into your DNA spaces or your Webex control hub. So you can actually, collect and control things like temperature, humidity. You can cut out noise, ambient noise. You can look at things like acoustics, and with integration with APIs, you can do things like, turning down the blinds or opening the curtains and so on. The last use case is around ad hoc spaces versus scheduled, right? And here's a use case of how you can use our solutions or even other vendor solutions in terms of finding a space, wayfinding, having a signage outside the room, checking in automatically and checking out automatically, right? And so this is controlled by third-party solutions, which work with Cisco, and obviously we sell that on our platform today. An example is AppSpace. Okay, that's a vendor that manages this end-to-end flow for us. And the other piece is the control hub, like I mentioned, is the single pane of glass where you can manage this end-to-end flow. So things like safe return guidance, locations and flows, like where is collaboration space available by location? How do I understand the efficiency of my workplace? What activities are going on inside them? How do I understand the environmental conditions and so on? Right? So that's all I had. With that, I'd like to say thank you for your time. And hopefully we've given you a flavor of all of the stuff that we do, and it's just skimming the surface, really. If you're interested more in how Cisco can enable you, please visit this URL, or please get in touch with us. We're happy to help you all. Thanks so much. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Shiv. Thank you and congratulations to all our speakers for such informative presentation. Thank you so much, Cisco, for this great prizes. And to formally close our webinar, let me call on my colleague, Roldan Yutuzan, Colliers Director and Head of Project Management, for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us in today's webinar. Thanks to our experts, Shiv, Shona, Roger, for joining the first collaboration of Lambda Direct and Project Management in providing insights to what is for ahead in our workplace. Key highlights for me: hybrid workspace actually works. Technology is a necessity. We have to return to office and transition to the new normal. Scalable workplace will be the new anything. What is common to note our investment is technology to ensure we have a robust platform and ability to collaborate at any given time, space, and to ensure productivity of the team. A well-planned workspace can be inviting, innovative, and inspiring to its end user, and the ability to construct every workspace for a healthy workplace by incorporating operational flexibility and sustainability in the design is a plus in our workplace. And as we move forward, we can see more green space than need space integrated into planning. We will be embracing work is what we do and not where you do it. A well-planned robust technology for a healthy workplace will be the catalyst to a new normal working environment. And we are some values together with our expert analysts are looking forward to are looking forward to be with you in that journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar, Work Well, Building a Sustainable Workplace. On behalf of Colliers Philippines, Hearn Hearn Consulting, Webex by Cisco, the European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, our esteemed presenters, I've been your host and moderator, Maricris Torino-Hosan. Thank you for joining us today and have a great day. Bye, everyone.